My folks booked a table at a high-end Italian place for the whole family, then told me I had to sit alone in the corner because the big table is for married people. I didn't argue. I calmly ordered my own food and quietly deactivated the credit card that was paying their $750 tab. 20 minutes later, they were panicking at the counter while I was already pulling into my driveway. I, 34M, have been the family ATM for the better part of 6 years. Not in a vague, resentful way. I mean in the very literal, documented sense. I set up a shared credit card that both my parents use freely. I covered my younger brother's security deposit twice, and I paid the down payment on my sister-in-law's car when my brother couldn't swing it. None of this was ever asked about or acknowledged. It was just expected, absorbed into the background noise of family life, the same way electricity is expected when you flip a switch. I'm single. That fact has become, over the years, a kind of slow drip insult at family gatherings. My mom makes the occasional comment about finding someone. My dad gives me the look, the one that says he's vaguely disappointed in a way he can't articulate. My brother and his wife have 2 kids and live about 40 minutes away, and at every dinner they occupy the center of gravity in the room, the way couples with children always do in families like mine. I've made peace with most of it. I genuinely have. But last Saturday pushed something past its limit. My dad called me Thursday evening and told me he'd made a reservation at this Italian place downtown. The kind of place with a prix-fixe menu and a sommelier who introduces himself by name. He said it was a family dinner, everyone was coming, and that it would be good for us to all be together. I had no reason to be suspicious. I said I'd be there. The restaurant was dim and warm when I walked in, smelling like garlic and expensive wine. The host led me toward the back where my family was. Already seated at a long rectangular table, my parents, my brother and his wife, their 2 kids, and my uncle's family who I hadn't seen in almost a year. There were flowers in the center and a bottle of something red already open. It looked like a celebration, though nobody had told me what we were celebrating. I was about to pull out a chair at the end of the table, the natural empty spot, when my mom turned and told me that seat was for someone else. I paused. She gestured toward a 2-top tucked against the far wall, nearly behind a decorative partition, and told me that was where I'd be sitting. I asked her what she meant. My dad, not looking up from the menu, said the big table was for married people and that I'd be more comfortable over there. I stood still for a second. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't hit. I was. Something in my chest went tight and cold at the same time. My brother made a small noise that might have been sympathy or discomfort, and his wife looked down at her menu. My aunt was watching me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Nobody said anything to contradict it. Nobody pushed back. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I nodded, walked over to the corner table, set my jacket on the chair, and sat down. The waiter came over within a couple of minutes. Young guy, professional, and I told him I'd be dining separately from the group. He didn't blink. I ordered a pasta dish, a glass of red I actually liked, and a starter I'd been eyeing since I walked in. The food at this place was genuinely good and I was, briefly and absurdly, glad I'd have it to myself. While I ate, I could hear the noise from the big table in low waves, my dad's laugh, my niece's high-pitched excitement about something, silverware against ceramic. I ate slowly. I refilled my wine once. And about halfway through my main course, I opened the credit card app on my phone. The card is mine. I set it up. I fund it. I am the primary account holder. My parents are authorized users, which means I can remove that access from the same app interface in about 4 taps. I'd never done it before. I had never felt the need, because I had never truly believed they'd push far enough to make me feel like a stranger at my own family table. I removed both of them. My brother wasn't on this particular card, so he wasn't affected. I closed the app, finished my wine, and paid my own bill in cash. I tipped the waiter well. He'd been attentive without being intrusive and had, I noticed, made a point of not making me feel like I was sitting in exile. Small kindness. I appreciated it. I put on my jacket, walked out past the big table without stopping, and drove home. I was in my driveway before any of them likely noticed I'd left. My phone started going off about 23 minutes after I got home. First a text from my mom, then a call from my dad, then 3 calls in a row that I let go to voicemail. I didn't listen to the voicemails that night. I knew the shape of what they'd say, confusion first, then the particular kind of anger that comes from being embarrassed in public, then the thing they do where the blame migrates entirely onto the person who inconvenienced them. I made tea and watched something on my laptop and went to bed around 11. Update 1, Sunday morning. My dad called at 8:15. I picked up this time because I'd slept and I was ready for it. He was controlled but tight, the way he gets when he's furious but trying to manage how it comes out. He told me the card had been declined in front of the whole table and that it was humiliating. He wanted to know if something was wrong with it. I told him the card was fine. He asked me what I meant. I told him I'd removed him and my mom as authorized users. Silence. Then he asked me why. I told him I'd decided to reassess who has access to an account I fund. More silence. Then he told me that dinner was $740 something, not counting tip, and that the restaurant had held him there while they sorted it out. I told him I was sorry to hear that. He told me that was not an acceptable response. I asked him, very quietly, whether he thought it was acceptable to seat his son alone in a corner because he wasn't married. He started to say something about it not being that simple, about the seating and the reservation, and something about the kids needing space. I told him I didn't want to hear a logistics explanation for what was a deliberate decision. He went quiet again. Then he said I'd made him look bad in front of the family. I pointed out that I hadn't done anything at the table. He didn't have a clean answer for that. We ended the call without resolution, which is pretty standard for us. Update 2, Sunday afternoon. My brother texted me. He was more measured than my dad, which I'll give him. He tends to approach things at a lower temperature. He said he understood I was upset and that the seating situation had been poorly handled. He stopped short of saying it was wrong outright, which I noticed. Then he mentioned that he and his wife had ended up covering the dinner on their card, which had apparently been a stretch, and that it had put them in an awkward position. He asked if I'd consider reinstating the card or reimbursing them for the dinner. I sat with that for a while before I replied. I told him I was glad he'd been honest about how the night felt. I told him I'd think about whether I wanted to reinstate anything. I told him I wasn't going to reimburse a dinner I wasn't invited to sit at as an equal participant. He didn't respond after that, which was probably the right move on his part. My sister-in-law texted me separately a few hours later, and what she said surprised me. She said she'd felt uncomfortable all evening, that she hadn't known beforehand it was going to be a seated by marital status situation, and that she thought how I'd been treated was genuinely embarrassing. She didn't ask me for anything. She just said it. That was the only text I responded to warmly. Update 3, Monday. My mom called Monday afternoon. I'd expected the most emotion from her. She usually leads with hurt feelings when she's actually on the wrong side of something. It's a kind of deflection she's been doing my whole life. But she surprised me. She was quieter than I expected. She said she knew the seating had been hurtful. She used the word hurtful, which is not a word my mother deploys casually. She said she hadn't thought about how it would land, that in her head it had been about the kids having room and the table layout, and things she couldn't fully explain now without them sounding like excuses, which she acknowledged they were. I didn't soften immediately. I told her that being single in this family has always carried a penalty, and that Saturday was just the version of it that finally had a price tag attached. She was quiet for a while after that. She said she didn't realize it felt that way. I told her it had felt that way for years. That conversation didn't resolve into anything neat or final, but it was the most honest exchange I've had with her in a long time, and I think we both knew that. I have not reinstated the card. I don't know if I will. What I do know is that the question on the table now, the one nobody wants to say out loud, is not about a credit card at all. It's about whether I'm a full member of this family or just someone who funds it. That question has been sitting unanswered for 6 years. Saturday just finally forced everyone, including me, to look directly at it. I'm not angry anymore. I'm something quieter and more settled than angry. I did what I did calmly, without drama, without a speech, without a single raised voice. I sat in my corner, I ate my pasta, I paid my bill, I drove home. The consequences weren't engineered to be cruel. They were just accurate. A precise reflection of what the night had already established, that I was separate from them, and that they had chosen that. I simply agreed with their framing, and then I acted accordingly.